Hey everybody, Zil Brothers here with another video. This one with my brand new mic. Hopefully it ups the quality of the audio. And I want to talk about this Facebook post that's going around. And it basically starts with talking about addiction and how if you haven't gone through it, you can't speak on it. And how you shouldn't judge anybody else who's gone through addiction. You don't know their battles, you don't know their demons. And so the force of the post is to make it so that you're supporting those who are going through addictions and that you don't judge anybody who's going through an addiction because you don't know what they went through. And I just want to look at this from a spiritual mindset and call BS. I was looking at a video that was on Pocket Watching with JT. And this is a good channel on YouTube. They talk about financial stuff. And he had this show called If You're Broke, It's Your Fault. Prove that I'm wrong. And throughout the show, nobody could prove him wrong. And I will bring the same matter to you. If you are addicted, it is your fault. It is the result of your decisions. Prove me wrong. Now, you're not going to be able to prove me wrong because you know it's your decisions. And I think one of the hard things that we have as a Christian community is we don't want to hold people accountable for their own decisions. And what we tend to do to unspiritualize a discussion is to frame it in ways that the Bible doesn't. So we'll talk about addiction. We don't talk about slavery to sin. We talk about somebody being dependent on a substance. We don't talk about them being a drunkard. And when you look at the scripture, I don't like to use the word addicted because it has this connotation that the person can't help what's going on. That this jumped on them. They were just walking down the street and all of a sudden cocaine jumped out of the bushes, took them down, jumped on them, handcuffed them, and now they can't get away. They kidnapped by cocaine for the rest of their life. And in reality, what happens is somebody willfully makes a bad decision to start taking drugs. And they don't understand the depths of what that slavery is. And the reason that a lot of people don't like when we talk about addiction is the same reason that people don't like talking about Hitler. Now, let me just make that reference because a lot of times people don't like talking about Hitler because when you talk about Hitler, you get to this unsettling conclusion that normal people followed this guy to the path of madness. And you might want to say, well, all those people is evil. But if you go to Germany now and you look at the descendants of those people now, you'll realize they're just normal people. They're not any more evil than anybody else. And you slowly come to this realization that, dang it, with the right leader, we could be talked into doing any amount of madness. It makes you have an unsettling conclusion. Addiction is much the same way. It can make you realize that slavery to sin is not that far away for any of us. And all it takes is a few bites at the wrong sin that Satan can make you think is so tempting. It will make you feel so fulfilled, right? If you had a sin and it was before you and it had the image of a person, that person will always be beautiful. Sin never looks as ugly as it really is. It may be ugly, but it's like the beer commercial. You never see the person with the beer gut on a beer commercial. You just see fit people having fun. You don't see the guy who's addicted. You don't see the guy who shows up at the bar at 11 waiting for them to open. You don't see that guy. You don't see that image. You don't see the guy who you walk past, you could just smell he been drinking. You don't see that guy. You don't see the people laying in the gutter. You don't see that. You don't see the lady who's willing to do anything to get some alcohol or some drugs. You don't see that. You see the fit person drinking Miller Lite, looking super cool, having good looking girls with them. You see all that. And in reality, the image of addiction makes us all realize that we too could be slaves to sin. We too could be just like the crack addict. We too could be just like the person who's willing to kill themselves on heroin because that's what most people do for sin. You talk to most people and you say, oh, why aren't you married? And they'll talk about this and this and that. And at the end of the day, a lot of times what you'll have is somebody who has an undisciplined life. And if they would just fix that one issue of discipline, their whole life would change, but they refuse to change it. And so they refuse success because of their own bad decisions. That's addicted. They're addicted to their lack of discipline. You can see the same thing when it comes to crime. Some people say, oh, they were forced into that lifestyle. They had to sell drugs. No, they chose to sell drugs. They chose badly. And because they chose badly, they have to keep living badly. Because when you sin, you get addicted to what you sin. There is a connection to you in your sin. Here's the thing. We are identified by what we do. A person who commits murder is a murderer. A person who commits adultery is an adulterer. And because there's is inescapable but invisible connection between us and our sin, that's that chain that binds us. And it is impossible to fully escape it. It's impossible for a man to fully escape that. And it's uncomfortable to talk about it. Because when you see somebody like that, you want to turn away. I remember my brother was coming back from Summerfest, and a lady propositioned him. And if you would have looked at that lady, I bet you 15 years ago, she would have been somewhat attractive. But 15 years later, after drugs had beaten her up, she made this proposition, and no man in his right mind would have took her up on it. $5 for it, and you can imagine what she offered. And the point is that it wasn't tempting because of what addiction had done to her. And we talk about addiction, I would rather say slavery to sin had done to her. What evil had done to her. What evil does. It kills. When we talk about sin killing, it is uncomfortable to look at it. It's uncomfortable to look at somebody who is coughing and coughing and coughing and still wants a cigarette. That's more than just a medical condition. That is a spiritual condition. And it happens to us so easily. And we can get addicted to something as little as coffee. And that could change our mindset, make us lose our temper. We can get addicted to things easily. We often become slaves to sin. And so, that's why I rebuke those kind of posts. Now, I'm not one who likes those chain kind of posts anyway. They're kind of lame anyway. And those copy paste that kind of things. Come up with your own original thought. But beyond that, of it just being lame, it's wrong. And so Christians, you got to stand against this thought. This thought that somebody can just be addicted and that there's some kind of victim. When in reality, they're making their own decisions. And they're reaping what they have sown.